I don't know how you were feeling during the pandemic. So it's one of those times when you realize just how important mental health is. If I ask you how you are you actually able to answer? It's a very complicated argument at the moment, a very complicated question. Things affect you in ways we don't even know. It also raises questions about the impact it has on people who are already battling, suffering, living with mental health issues. One of the issues is borderline personality disorder. Dr. Eugene Allers is a member of the South African Society of Psychiatrists. Dr. Allers, good afternoon to you. First, what is borderline personality disorder?
Maybe one should talk about personality disorders and then discuss where borderline fits in. Personality disorders are disorders of personality, meaning that in people's development, when they start developing a personality, of course we're born with a particular personality, but as we grow older and go through childhood and adolescence, we also, shape our personalities in a. Now, when people are in difficult situations or there are genetic underlays or something shapes their personality in a different kind of way, that the personality becomes what we call disordered. Now, we get three broad categories of personality. The first type is the people that are strange. They are loners, they live alone, they have strange thoughts. The second group is behavioral kind of disorder, where people's behavior is abnormal. And the last kind is an emotional kind of clingy, independent type of personality. So those are the three broad categories. Now, borderline personality disorder falls in the behavior category, that middle category. So that's where that disorder falls into. So borderline personality is people that feel that it is their particular problem is that they find relationships very, very difficult, and their attachment to people is very problematic and difficult. So they continuously feel abandoned, that people are going to abandon them, but their behavior is erratic, and it makes people abandon them. So it's this contradiction when people have this disorder.
How do you know if someone actually has this? I mean, are there particular signs? I mean, if someone is too clingy, or if someone is sort of clingy and then pushes you away or behaves in a particular way?
Yeah, I mean, that's normally, this is just an exaggeration of that kind of clinginess and then pushing away. So they under-evaluate relationships often. They meet a friend and they feel like, oh, this person I'm going to marry. And that person doesn't even know them quite well. Or the person really falls in love with them, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then they think, oh, this is just a friendship. So their reading and their evaluation of relationships are very problematic. Often, normally people are sort of on the same page. When you meet a friend, this is my friend, and they say, yeah, you're my friend, or, you're my husband or my wife. Yes, are we sort of on the same page? With patients with borderline personality disorder, they're never on the same page with that person. So, as we say, they're often very clinging and, oh, I'm so scared you're going to leave me. But they underestimate or overestimate the relationship. So the other person might feel like, why do you feel like this? We just met, kind of thing. So that's how their personalities are shaped.
Is it something you're born with? Is it something that can get worse over time? Is it something that maybe stress has a role in? And I say that specifically because I think the stress of the pandemic is having an impact on people in all sorts of unexpected ways.
Yeah, nature and nurture plays a role. We definitely know that, there are genetic overlays in terms of this disorder. So if you come from a family where this disorder is prevalent, there is a higher incidence, but then also nurture. Patients with this kind of personality often have upbringings that are problematic in a house. Often there's relationship problems between the parents, or alcohol problems between the parents, or bonding of the parents with this child. So the bonding issue is quite an important issue. So yes, there's nature and nurture involved in this disorder. Now you can imagine with the pandemic, that's one of the things that have been researched, not well, but a lot in previous pandemics where people had to be locked down, particularly the Spanish flu, where we saw that a large group of patients 5-10 years after the pandemic developed serious problems, mental health care problems, and often personality issues. Because the lockdown makes us not live normal lives. We are, we're in isolation, or away from normal social contacts. And that often brings a lot of stress within families, because normally families function quite well in an open kind of way. They come together, they eat together, they live together, but they also go out and spend time with their own friends or their own families, and then they separate, and then they come together again, which is quite healthy. Now, in a lockdown situation, you can imagine when people are locked down and in one house and they barely can go out, they get on each other's nerves often. And in particular, then the bonding becomes disturbed, the normal relationships become disturbed, and that is really, an area where personality disorders and also other psychiatric problems can develop, because it's an abnormal situation. Yes.
What do you do if someone in your family has this? How do you see it? I know some disorders, sometimes someone can actually diagnose themselves. I imagine with this, you're not going to be able to diagnose yourself.
Yeah, you actually need a specialist in this, a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist who've worked with patients like this. And often patients with borderline personality disorder don't get an understanding or a grip of what's going on in their own lives, because they read things so incorrectly. They read emotions incorrectly. Even their own emotions are read incorrectly. So they can't judge other people's emotions accurately either. So that leaves often a problem. And the comorbidities are very common in this personality disorder, because people are always continuously under stress, because their relationships are under stress. So they develop major depression, bipolar disorder, or other anxiety disorders. So you have to then distinguish what is actually in the part of the depression and the anxiety and the other disorders, and what is part of the personality. So it is complex. So you need specialists, psychiatrists or clinical psychologists, to help you diagnose these disorders, because you have to, distinguish what is the psychiatric disorder and what is the personality disorder. So they're often comorbid. But it is very difficult for families to live with patients like this, because they are so erratic, and their relationships are so stressed and problematic. So from a family point of view, these people have various kinds of symptoms that they present with. They often present with depression and mood instability, because they can have mood shifts 4 or 5 times a day.
Sure.
They would wake up happy, and during the day they would get angry, and then they would get sad, and then they would get happy again, and then they would get stressed again. So they have these mood shifts daily.
Dr. Eugene Ellis, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. A psychiatrist, I really do appreciate the time. Such an important thing to examine. Coming